Most people fail not because they lack intelligence, but because their words betray them. Scattered, weak, and forgettable. If you cannot articulate your thoughts with precision, you surrender power to those who can. In this lesson, I will reveal the art of speaking with such clarity that it becomes a weapon few dare to wield. In the courts of princes and the markets of men, speech is not merely a tool. It is the blade that cuts alliances, the coin that buys influence, and the shield that guards one's reputation. Yet most squander it, drowning in vagueness, hesitating at the edge of conviction, mistaking noise for persuasion. Here, we shall dissect clarity as a strategist dissects a battlefield, examining not only what must be said, but how it must be delivered, with precision sharp enough to wound, yet controlled enough to command respect. Welcome to the language of power. Power begins not with gold or armies, but with words. And yet, most people squander them like beggars tossing coins into the gutter. Clarity is not a luxury. It is a currency, a rare one that few know how to mint and fewer still know how to spend. Ask yourself, when you speak, do others listen because they must, or because they pity your attempt to be heard? Do your words command attention, or merely beg for it? In the corridors of power, clarity is the difference between giving an order and pleading for compliance. Consider the courts of Renaissance Italy. Princes did not speak in long, wending speeches filled with sentiment. They spoke with precision. One word could spark a war. Another could end a dynasty. A single misstep, an unguarded phrase, could mean betrayal, exile, or worse. Speech was a blade honed to perfection, never a dull instrument. But why does clarity carry such weight? Because human beings fear uncertainty more than they fear conflict. When you speak clearly, you project certainty. And certainty, to the human mind, reads as strength. Even when the content is questionable, delivery can make it sound like prophecy. Watch the weak man in any gathering. He over-explains, he justifies, he softens his words with endless qualifiers. I think, maybe, I guess, as if apologizing for daring to speak at all. His words scatter like arrows loosed without aim. They strike nothing. Now watch the man who understands clarity. He says little. Each sentence lands like a hammer on stone. Even his silence feels deliberate, calculated, like a general waiting for the exact moment to order his troops forward. Which of these two would you follow into battle? Which one would you trust to decide your fate? Psychologists call this phenomenon linguistic dominance. The mind equates clarity with competence. Not because the clear speaker is always right, but because humans are wired to follow those who seem certain. We crave order. We despise hesitation. And we will instinctively yield to those who offer certainty in a world drowning in doubt. This is why clarity is a currency. The more you possess it, the more influence you can buy. With enough of it, you can even purchase loyalty, obedience, and fear. But clarity demands discipline, and discipline begins with thought. Before you speak, ask yourself, what is my purpose? To persuade, to warn, to inspire fear. Each word must serve that purpose, or it should not be spoken at all. History is littered with the wreckage of those who ignored this principle. Consider a diplomat who utters one ambiguous phrase in negotiation. The enemy interprets it as weakness. War follows. Or a ruler who offers a decree laced with sentiment instead of precision. His subjects sense doubt. Rebellion brews. Even in your own life, the stakes may not be empires or wars, but they are no less real. A poorly chosen phrase in a meeting can cost you a promotion. A vague answer in a negotiation can cost you leverage. A soft statement in a confrontation can cost you respect. The battlefield may change, but the rules remain. Clarity also serves a second, subtler function it conceals. When your words are sharp, people rarely notice what you have left unsaid. They assume completeness. They do not probe further. This is how clarity becomes a weapon not of expression, but of control. Imagine you wish to hide your true intentions. You state your position in 10 words, calm, simple, decisive. No one dares ask for more. Why? Because they fear looking foolish before someone so sure of himself. And thus, your silence hides more than your speech reveals. The weak man drowns in words. The strong man chooses them as a jeweler chooses gems, few, flawless, and impossible to ignore. And so I ask you, how much is your clarity worth? Enough to command attention? Enough to command respect? Or should you master it? Enough to command obedience itself? Most speak because they fear being forgotten. But the wise remain silent because they understand something far greater. Words have more force when they arrive from a place of deliberate restraint. Ask yourself, when was the last time you paused before answering, not from hesitation, but from control? When was the last time you let silence do the speaking for you, making others lean in, straining to hear what you might say next? History rewards those who master this. Julius Caesar was notorious for his measured words. In the Senate, he often waited for his enemies to speak first, revealing their fears and their hopes before he uttered a single sentence. When he finally did speak, his words landed with the weight of inevitability. Because silence had already primed the room to believe him. Silence unsettles people. Humans are addicted to noise. Conversation, explanation, reassurance. We fill the air with chatter not to inform, but to soothe ourselves against the discomfort of stillness. Yet this very discomfort is what gives silence its power. When you resist the urge to fill a pause, you create tension. And tension demands release. Through attention, through compliance, or through surrender. Observe the interrogator who waits after asking a question. Seconds stretch into minutes. The suspect fidgets, searching for words. The silence grows heavier until the need to fill it becomes unbearable, and the truth slips out. The interrogator wins, not through speech, but through calculated absence of it. This is not merely a tactic of war or politics. It is a principle of influence everywhere. In business negotiations, the man who speaks first often loses. Why? Because he reveals too much, his limits, his desperation, his eagerness to close the deal. The one who waits learns more than he gives. He lets the other party expose their weaknesses while his own remain hidden. But silence is not passivity. It is preparation. It is watching the battlefield before drawing your sword. It is gauging the mood of the room before giving your decree. It is the calm before the storm that makes the storm terrifying. There is also a psychological weapon hidden in silence: ambiguity. When you do not rush to explain yourself, people begin to imagine your thoughts. They project their fears, their hopes, their insecurities onto you. This projection often works in your favor, as they assume you possess greater strength, wisdom, or cunning than you may actually hold. In the courts of Florence, a ruler's slightest pause could signal disapproval, hint at secret knowledge, or suggest an unspoken threat. No decree was necessary. The court interpreted silence as judgment and acted accordingly. Thus, power was exercised without a single word being uttered. But there is a danger here. Silence must be deliberate, not awkward. It must feel intentional, not uncertain. A pause held too long becomes hesitation. Hesitation becomes weakness. The line is thin, but mastery lies in walking it with confidence. How can you practice this? Begin by asking a question and waiting longer than comfort allows. Do not rush to clarify. Do not rescue the other from their own unease. Let them speak first. Let them reveal themselves. Then, when you do choose to speak, do so with precision, as if every syllable has been sharpened to cut through the air like steel. Words delivered after silence land like a gavel, final, unquestionable, absolute. Understand this: The most dangerous man in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest. It is the one who waits, who studies, who listens, and when he finally moves, his strike cannot be parried, because it was prepared long before his enemy even saw it coming. Those who fail to understand this live as pawns. They accept the world as it is presented to them. They argue facts, defend principles, and hope reason will prevail. But reason alone has never ruled men. Perception has, and perception is always up for sale. Consider this. When two men describe the same event, which version becomes history? The one told with the greatest accuracy, or the one told with the greatest conviction? Which man is remembered? The one who lived nobly, or the one who made others believe he did? Truth is not the coin of power. Perception is. Framing is the art of shaping that perception, of controlling not only what others think, but how they think about it. It is not persuasion in the common sense. It is the silent rewriting of reality, so subtle that people do not realize they have been guided to a conclusion. They believe they reached it themselves. History offers countless examples. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, he framed the act not as treason, but as liberation. He was not defying the Senate, he was answering the call of Rome. The truth, he was seizing power, but his framing gave him legitimacy, and legitimacy gave him an empire. This principle extends far beyond empires. You use it every day, whether you know it or not. When you present an idea, do you allow others to define its meaning? Or do you set the terms before they can? For whoever frames first wins. Psychologists call this cognitive priming. The first narrative offered becomes the lens through which all other information is judged. People do not see facts. They see stories, and the one who tells the most compelling story becomes the custodian of reality. Observe the leader who announces a difficult decision. He does not say, "This will be painful." He says, "This is necessary for survival." He does not say, "We may lose." He says, "We are about to win, but victory demands sacrifice." Notice how the same reality, risk, loss, uncertainty, has been reframed as courage, strength, inevitability. And those who hear it do not question. They follow. But framing is not merely about words. It is about timing, symbolism, and emotion. A statement delivered in the heat of conflict carries one meaning. Whispered in a moment of calm, another. An action taken under the banner of justice appears noble. Taken in silence, it appears suspicious. The facts do not change, only the frame. This is why powerful men and women are never careless with language. They define the battlefield before stepping onto it. They decide which virtues are admired and which vices are condemned. They dictate whether a rival is seen as a visionary or a threat. They make reality bend to their will. But let us be clear, framing is not lying. It is selective truth. It is the act of highlighting one piece of reality and hiding another, much as a painter uses shadow and light to guide the eye toward a single point on the canvas. The observer believes he is seeing the whole picture, but he sees only what the painter permits. In your life, this skill determines whether your ideas gain respect or are dismissed, whether your failures appear as lessons or as incompetence, whether your presence is seen as an asset or a threat. Frame poorly, and you will always be defending yourself. Frame well, and others will defend you. So I ask you, whose frame are you living in right now? Yours or someone else's? And how much longer will you let others define what is true for you? Most believe persuasion requires eloquence. They mistake ornament for power. They wrap their thoughts in endless phrases, thinking complexity will impress. But complexity is weakness. It blurs intention. It dilutes authority. And it gives your opponent places to hide. Simplicity, by contrast, leaves no refuge. It cuts cleanly. It lands with force. It cannot be argued against because it offers no excess to attack. Consider the great proclamations of history. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Caesar did not waste a single syllable on justification or flourish. 3 strikes, 3 blows. A conquest framed in the fewest words possible, making it sound inevitable, almost divine. Why does simplicity carry such weight? Because the human mind craves clarity. When words are many, doubt is born. When words are few, they feel certain. We believe the man who speaks directly knows what he is talking about. And we question the man who rambles, as though his ideas cannot stand alone. Psychologists call this processing fluency. The easier something is to understand, the more truthful it feels. Even a falsehood, spoken cleanly, can sound like wisdom. Even the truth, spoken poorly, can sound like a lie. But ruthless simplicity is more than being concise. It is choosing words that strike like steel. It is stripping away everything soft, everything hesitant, everything that might dull the blade. It is saying not, I think we might need to consider this, but this is what must be done. Look to military orders, royal decrees, or the judgments of law. Notice how rarely they wander into unnecessary detail. Advance. We execute. Each word holds the weight of finality. No explanation, only action. And yet, most fail at this. Why? Because simplicity requires courage. When you speak plainly, you expose your intent. There is no fog to hide behind, no layers of meaning to shield you. Your words stand naked, vulnerable to attack. Only the strong dare to speak this way, for only the strong can withstand the weight of their own clarity. Let us descend deeper. Simplicity is not merely a tool of expression, it is a tool of control. Consider negotiation. One side makes a long, detailed argument. The other responds with a single line. This is my price. Who seems stronger? Who dictates the tone of the exchange? The man of many words appears desperate, pleading for understanding. The man of few words projects certainty, and certainty bends reality in his favor. Even in conflict, the principle holds. The subtle threat, this ends today, carries more weight than the verbose warning that explains why, how, and under what conditions. A threat explained becomes a plea. A threat stated simply becomes law. Ruthless simplicity also commands memory. People forget long speeches, but they remember sharp phrases that burn themselves into the mind. Liberty or death? The king is dead. Long live the king. Each a sentence that carries the weight of 1,000 others, without ever needing to say them. But do not mistake simplicity for bluntness. It is not the crude swing of a club. It is the precise thrust of a stiletto. Bluntness reveals too much. Simplicity conceals everything but the strike. Ask yourself, how many words do you waste explaining yourself? How often do you bury your sharpest points beneath layers of softness? And how much stronger would you appear if every sentence you spoke could double as a command? Understand this. Those who master ruthless simplicity do not merely communicate. They dictate. They decide. They define reality. A phrase uttered too soon dies unheard. A command delivered in the wrong tone loses its sting. Yet, when words are placed with precision and delivered with the weight of authority, they become more than speech. They become law. Ask yourself, how often do you think about how you speak rather than merely what you say? How many opportunities for influence have you lost, not because your words lacked meaning, but because they lacked presence? Presence is born of tone. Power is born of timing. Consider a ruler addressing his court. If he speaks in haste, with quick, nervous words, he plants uncertainty in the minds of his listeners. If he speaks too softly, his decree feels like a suggestion. But if he pauses before speaking, letting silence build tension, if his words emerge slow, deliberate, weighted with calm certainty, even the simplest command feels carved in stone. This is not performance. This is psychology. Humans do not merely hear words, they feel them. They read tone as a signal of confidence or weakness. A wavering tone whispers of doubt. A measured tone commands trust. And a tone laced with steel. It carries the gravity of inevitability. History is littered with examples. When Churchill addressed Britain in its darkest hour, he did not plead. He did not rush. He spoke in rhythms, measured, heavy, almost ritualistic. His tone suggested not hope, but certainty. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. Each pause, each inflection, struck like a drum of war, turning words into resolve. Timing, too, is everything. Deliver a truth too soon, and it will be dismissed. Deliver it too late, and it will be irrelevant. Deliver it at the precise moment of greatest need or greatest fear, and it becomes undeniable. A statesman once said, "In politics, timing is everything." But this is not just politics. This is human nature. A simple sentence, delivered at the wrong moment, can ruin negotiations, spark rebellion, or reveal weakness. Yet the same sentence, delivered at the perfect moment, can secure loyalty, seal alliances, or end wars. Even in personal encounters, the principle holds. Consider a confrontation. You are accused. You do not speak immediately. You wait, studying your accuser, letting silence thicken. When you finally reply, your voice is calm, firm, and unshaken. You say little, but the weight of your tone and timing makes it sound like truth. Your accuser begins to question themselves. They feel they may have misjudged you. You have won, not through facts, but through delivery. Psychologists call this paralinguistic dominance, the unspoken signals of power embedded in tone, pacing, and rhythm. The content of a statement accounts for less than half its impact. The rest lies in how the statement is carried. It is not the words alone that persuade. It is the authority with which they are spoken. But tone and timing are not merely tools of persuasion. They are tools of intimidation. A calm tone in a moment of crisis suggests control so absolute it borders on menace. A perfectly timed statement, delivered when an opponent feels most vulnerable, can feel like a death blow. And yet, these are not skills to be used carelessly. A poorly placed pause becomes hesitation. An overdone tone becomes arrogance. Mastery lies in subtlety, in speaking as if command is natural to you, not performed for effect. So I ask you, how do you sound when you speak? Do you inspire trust? Do you command attention? Or do your words betray you? Spoken in haste, delivered with the tone of one seeking approval rather than obedience. Understand this: words may carry meaning, but tone and timing carry power. And those who master both do not speak like men. They speak like destiny. This is the ultimate weapon of speech, not clarity, not simplicity, not even tone, but the ability to strike at the hidden strings of human nature, pulling them so deftly that your words feel less like persuasion and more like destiny. Ask yourself, what truly moves people? Reason? Logic? Justice? No. These are noble illusions fit for philosophers and fools. Men are moved by emotion, by the promise of gain, by the fear of loss, by the hunger for recognition and the terror of being insignificant. History proves this endlessly. When leaders rally nations, do they appeal to reason? Or do they ignite pride, stir outrage, or promise glory? When generals command soldiers to die for a cause, do they explain strategic necessity? Or do they whisper of honor, immortality, and the shame of cowardice? Even revolutions are not born of reason, but of suffering hope and the belief that change is inevitable. Understanding this is not cynicism, it is realism. And realism gives power. Consider fear, the oldest motivator. A man may resist persuasion. He may question reason. But fear bypasses thought and commands action. Speak to a man's fear of failure, and he will obey your warning. Speak to his fear of shame, and he will defend your cause as if it were his own honor. Fear sharpens words into commands that cannot be ignored. Then there is pride. No force binds loyalty more tightly. Flatter a man's intelligence, his strength, his sense of destiny, and he will lend you his voice, his resources, even his life. But wound his pride, and he will turn against you, even when it means his own ruin. Thus, the wise never speak to diminish pride, they speak to magnify it, while quietly steering it toward their own ends. Desire, too, is a key. The promise of reward, wealth, recognition, freedom, makes men rationalize anything. They will call injustice opportunity. They will call danger challenge. They will call submission loyalty. All because you have made them believe there is something to be gained. Psychologists call this emotional primacy. The mind decides based on feeling, then seeks logic to justify it afterward. Thus, the most effective words are not those that explain. They are those that stir, those that awaken the primal currents within. Fear, pride, desire, before reason has time to intervene. But there is a subtler layer still. Human nature craves belonging. Speak in a way that makes people feel part of something greater. A tribe, a cause, a legacy, and they will endure hardships they would otherwise flee. Why? Because to stand alone feels like death. But to stand with others, even at the edge of ruin, feels like meaning. This is why tyrants, prophets, and conquerors alike master not only what they say, but to whom they say it, and in what manner. A tyrant speaks to fear. A prophet speaks to hope. A conqueror speaks to pride. Each chooses the string to pull. Each knows which human weakness or strength will deliver obedience. And yet, this knowledge carries danger. For the moment you misread a man's nature, your words lose their bite. Speak to a coward of courage, and he will shrink. Speak to a cynic of hope, and he will laugh. Speak to the vain as if they are humble, and they will feel insulted. Thus, the art of weaponizing human nature demands observation first, and speech second. So I ask you, when you speak, do you aim at reason, or do you strike where men are weakest, and where they are strongest? Do your words skim the surface of thought, or do they pierce to the core of what makes men act? Because once you master this, your words no longer persuade. They command. And that, my friend, is the final key to speech that rules empires and bends reality itself. Power does not shout. It whispers beneath the surface of words, tone and timing, shaping perception, steering emotion, commanding action, all while remaining unseen. You have learned the weapons of speech: clarity, silence, framing, simplicity, authority, and the hidden levers of human nature. Tools not for idle conversation, but for influence, for control, for the quiet mastery of those who would otherwise command you. Ask yourself, how often have you been guided by words, believing the choice was yours when it never was? And now, how often could you guide others, leaving them convinced they acted of their own will? This is the final lesson. Those who control words control minds. Those who control minds control destiny. So tell me, what struck you most? Which weapon will you sharpen first? Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe for more lessons in strategy and human nature. And share this with those rare few who are ready to see the game for what it truly is. And play it well,